So in this video, I want to tell you guys a little bit of a story that I shared, kind of summarized in my book, The Unplugged Alpha, about how a woman will basically create rules around how she wants to deal with you and interact with you, and how she very quickly broke them. In the book, I talk about how women make rules for men that they deem to be betas, but they break rules for men that they deem to be alpha. And in that very brief story that I told, which also kind of ties into genuine burning desire and why that matters in a relationship, she very quickly went from setting rules to wanting to break them, and essentially wanted to take me to the bathroom for immediate intimacy. So a little bit of a rewind back to the start of the story, and then towards the end, there's kind of a punchline that was really, really funny that I didn't even bother to include in the book. So I thought it was relevant because I had this coaching client the other day, and we were diving into his problems, and this is the full story that I shared. So I wanted to sort of tell it publicly. So meet this gal on a dating app. I can't remember which one, but she was good enough looking in the app, and there was playful banter, and she was attractive. She was expressing interest, she was asking questions, which is always a very good sign. That's the kind of stuff that you want before you go and set a date with a chick. So we set a date, I show up there, and I always set dates generally to a chain of restaurants because it's a franchise restaurant in the Greater Toronto area. I don't know if you guys have them where you live. I wonder if somebody watching this video will know the place that I'm talking about. You can comment below, but they only hire very attractive women for the bar lounge area. There's no dudes serving in that area. It's only women. They do have guys and gals serving in the restaurant area, and the women that serve in the restaurant area, they're not the top shelf women. They only hire and reserve those gals for the lounge restaurant area. The reason why I use that as a date venue, and have done so for a long time, is we accidentally stumbled across it when I was with my accountant, and he wanted to always meet at this place. He used to call it the softcore place. So that's the nickname that he created for it. And one time he had to bring his bookkeeper along, his assistant. And she was, one of those devout, stout, sort of feminist gals. Although she had the conventional feminine, attractive look to her, she was no doubt a feminist, because she remarked, she looked around, she's like, why are all of the servers here like 10s, very attractive, and so friendly and all that sort of stuff. My accountant and I looked at each other because it's his choice to go there. And ever since then, years ago, if I've ever had a date, I always try to set it up at this particular restaurant chain, which I'm not going to name. I want you guys to see if you can name it in the comments below in the Greater Toronto area. Anyway, the reason why I go there is because these women are very attractive. They're always friendly. And it's always good to have pre-selection on a date. All that pre-selection means is attractive women, generally, is what you want is attractive women, pre-select you or give strong, what are called IOIs, indicators of interest to you, and hopefully are a little bit flirtatious. So if you know how to sort of game them, you can generally use that to your advantage when you're on a date. Because when your date sees that an attractive woman, who's generally younger than they are, usually speaking, is very flirtatious and kind, and they laugh at your jokes, sort of stuff, it's always going to make them like you more. So it's always a good idea to find a venue or a place or a chain of restaurants that like, and are familiar with, that hire a good caliber of friendly and attractive women. So anyway, show up at the restaurant. This gal shows up, and she kind of catfished me. She was taller and probably 30 to 35 pounds heavier than what I would generally date. So she basically lied about her height and her weight. No surprise, I've talked about this before. When women take photographs at altitude and they wear a low-cut top to sort of accentuate what's in there, they're distracting you from what's below what's in there because you can't really see it. And it makes them look a lot leaner at that angle. So women routinely use this to sort of catfish guys. She was, I was there, she was cute enough to, carry on. I had nothing else planned for the afternoon, so I figured I'll sit down and have a chat with this gal, whatever, we'll see what happens. But she wasn't my type. So one of the first things that happened immediately is because I just wasn't that into her, she picked up on that, right? And when a gal sees that she's got to sort of like try harder for your attention, because we know that attention is a coin of the realm for women. When they try harder for the attention, then they kind of invest themselves in the game. They kind of put some skin in the game with you, and it's generally a good sign to go. So things are starting to stack up in my benefit, right? First of all, she's not what I was expecting. My level of interest in her goes down. She still, smiles and greets me warmly and hugs me and gives me a kiss on the cheek, sort of stuff. Standard sort of stuff. And, as we walk into the restaurant, I, of course, gesture to go sit into the lounge area because that's the place to be, as I described earlier. We go sit down. Oh, let me just address the part about the height. So I have a very kind of specific range that I deal with. I don't generally date shorter than about 5'2", 3", and I don't generally go higher than about 5'9" right? She was taller than 5'9". She was probably like 5'10" without heels. She was wearing a couple inches. I'm 6'2", so I'm kind of like looking at and almost up at her. I don't like big chicks. Friends of mine and I have kind of joked about this, and it's like, if there's an attractive tall chick, or like an Amazonian, they'll be like, oh, Rich won't like her because she's like a Sasquatch, right? So that's just my preference. It is what it is. So we go inside, we sit down. Again, she's heavier, she's taller than what I like, but she's still attractive. She's got a pretty face. So we sit down, a little bit of banter, playful, sit down, order a drink. Girl comes, takes her order, a little bit of flirt. She's very attractive, a little bit of competition anxiety from the gal that's sitting down at the table with me on this date. Good, everything's going along well. She starts to, talk about her experiences, because one of the things that I would tend to do if I was on a date with a gal that I just wasn't particularly interested in, but I'm there anyway, she's about, whatever sort of thing, I would just ask questions. So what's your dating been like? Or, if they were involved in the past, or they got a story, like I was engaged or I was married or something like that. Oh, okay, so why didn't that work out for you? Why didn't the marriage work out? Why did the engagement get called off? I was always interested in that information. It's part of what kind of led me into all this, unplugging and dealing with my own stuff. And I was always fascinated by the stories that they would tell. So she starts to tell me stories about how her dating life has been sucking, how she's been catfished, and she catfished me, of course. Guys aren't what she was expecting them to be. They're not as tall as she was hoping they would be, because she's a tall gal, obviously. They're not as tall as she was hoping they would be, or as attractive, or they didn't have, the financial resources that she was expecting when she set up the date. They would show up in some shitty, busted-ass, rusted old car, versus something that was as nice or nicer than her car, which is what women want. Women are hypergamous. They want guys that are at a stage in life and better off than what they are. That's just what they prefer. So she starts telling me about how she sets these rules for guys. I'm like, okay, here we go. I set rules around, when intimacy is going to happen and at what point. And then she starts telling me about the 8-date rule. And I talked about this in my book. And when women make rules for guys, they're basically shit testing you. It's basically a test to see what you're made of. They want to see what category you fit in. Is he an alpha? Is he a beta? In what quadrant is this guy in my mind, so that I know how to deal with him, on a future basis? And I just laughed. I was just like, I'm taking a sip of my beer. I almost spit it out. I'm like, here we go, the 8-date rule, or some version of that. I'm like, I don't negotiate desire. Okay, now at that point, I had come to the realization that negotiating desire never works. It only leads to obligated compliance and resentment down the road. You don't want negotiated sort of type of relationships. You don't want to be like, oh, okay, if I do this, then I'll do that. You want genuine burning desire. I talk about it in an entire chapter in my book. It's the best way to navigate when it comes to women. It's very obvious when women have genuine burning desire. It's not something that you got to figure out, or it's like, oh, I don't know if she has it, or how do I figure this out, or don't do. It's like taking a frying pan to the forehead. When a chick has genuine burning desire for you, she doesn't make rules for you. There's no 8-date rule on when intimacy is going to happen. There's no, I don't do anything until at this point in time, or until you take me out for a certain number of dinners, or whatever. None of that exists. Women will break rules for men that they deem alpha, and they'll make rules for guys that they deem to be beta. They want to sort of test them and put them in a category, and then, size them up from that point on. So, she states the 8-date rule, blah, 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 blah. I just laugh. I'm like, I don't negotiate desire. I certainly don't negotiate when intimacy is going to happen. It has to be organic. As soon as you start putting rules and boundaries on when things like this happen, you're running into all kinds of problems, right? A guy that is worth his salt, a guy that knows his worth, isn't going to sit there and count down on the dates and be like, okay, well, we're date number 7, so next date is when the intimacy happens, so let's get a overnight bag ready and all this dope. This is what, she's hoping nerds will do, and this is what, the uninitiated, plugged-in guys will do. They'll be like, oh, well, she must be a good girl if she's going to make me wait 8 dates. She's the kind of girl that I want to take seriously. I maybe want to have a long-term relationship with her. It's a bit of a play, guys. All women have skeletons in the closet. Some women have graveyards. I can't remember what her age was. I want to put it at late 20s, early 30s, but she was probably about 10 years younger than what I was at the time when I was dating, but younger than me, but old enough that she would have obviously had some experience in life dating, or had some notches, but young enough that she wasn't like, that old, 40, 50 or whatever. So I'm just like, spit out my drink practically. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. She's trying to pull the purity card. Like I'm innocent and I'm pure and I'm valuable and make a guy wait. Because that's what women do. It's like they'll spend their 20s partying away, riding the carousel, Ibiza, Cancun, foam cannon parties, the couple of cute Italian guys when they're traveling Europe, like all of that stuff, right? They'll go and rack up all these notches and they'll start to sell you the story of purity, like I want to wait, or I'm a good girl, and a good guy will wait for me to give me what I want, sort of thing. So again, I just explained to her, you try not to explain shit to women because it doesn't really work out real well, but I just state to her, like, look, I don't negotiate desire. I'm certainly not going to negotiate when intimacy happens. It's got to be organic. I don't play these games. That's just not me. Now, she didn't like that at first. She paused, she looked at me, she kind of had a stunned look. It's almost like a deer in the headlights sort of thing. Like, oh, somebody's actually pushing back and has an opinion that's different from mine and doesn't roll with it. Yeah, that's who I am. Right then and there, she took me out of the plugged in beta category and was like, oh, this guy's not that, so he's that. Again, all women have skeletons in their closets. Some women have graveyards. Now, what she said next will shock you. She said, okay, let's go to the bathroom and bang right now. Now, remember, 2 seconds earlier, she's telling me the story of purity. I'm a good girl. I want to wait. I make 8 dates, happen. I don't just sleep around, blah, 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 blah. Like, she's complaining about her bad experience dating. And she goes from, I have a bad experience, so I have rules, to I'm not going to do all these things, to immediately, let's go to the bathroom and smash. Women will make rules for guys that they think are betas, and they'll break them for guys that they think are alpha males.
All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out the full-length podcast episode, you can find that right over here. Also, make sure you visit my website over here where you'll find my supplements, the opportunity to book me privately one-on-one for coaching, and most importantly, my new School of Unplugging, which you'll find on the Courses tab. Newer to the channel? Hit subscribe.